It was a quiet evening in my modest home in Fayetteville, North Carolina. The kind of evening that hums with routine yet carries an unspoken weight, like the air before a storm gathers its strength, heavy with unspoken promises. I stood in my living room, smoothing the folds of my navy blue dress, chosen with care for a family dinner at my son Garrett's new townhouse. Not too flashy, Marissa, my daughter-in-law, would roll her eyes at anything ostentatious, her taste for perfection a silent judgment, but neat enough to hold my dignity at 77. I'd long since abandoned chasing trends, but I liked to look presentable, to feel like I belonged at their table, in their lives, in the family I'd spent decades nurturing. The clock ticked toward 7 o'clock p.m., 1 hour until dinner, and a faint unease prickled my skin, a whisper of something amiss, a shadow creeping across the edges of my mind like a premonition I couldn't name. My living room was a sanctuary of memories, a gallery of moments frozen in time, each one a thread in the tapestry of my life, woven with love and sacrifice. Photographs lined the shelves. James, my late husband, grinning at our golden anniversary 15 years ago, his eyes warm with love that still lingered, a quiet presence even after his passing. Young Garrett, clutching a fishing rod, his face alight with pride at his first catch, his small hand warm in mine, his laughter a melody I'd carried in my heart. My grandchildren, Toby and Rebecca, in their graduation caps, their smiles bright with promise, their futures a canvas I'd helped paint with my support, my savings, my belief in them. These were my treasures, silent witnesses to a life I thought was full, a life I'd poured my heart, my savings, my everything into, believing it was enough to bind us, to keep us close. But tonight, that unease grew, a shadow lengthening, a warning I couldn't shake, a whisper that something was about to break. I glanced at James's picture, his steady gaze seeming to whisper, "Elizabeth, don't let them hurt you." His words, spoken years ago when he'd urged me to set boundaries, to protect myself, lingered like a prophecy I hadn't heeded, a caution I'd ignored in my desperate need to be needed, to be loved. The phone buzzed on the table, sharp and insistent, slicing through the quiet like a knife through silk, jarring me from my thoughts. Garrett's name flashed on the screen, and my heart lifted. Perhaps he was offering to pick me up, though such gestures had grown rare in recent years, replaced by formality, distance, and a growing sense of obligation that hung between us like a fog. I slipped on my glasses, a smile tugging at my lips, and opened the message, expecting warmth, expecting family, expecting the son I'd raised, the boy who'd once looked at me with trust and love. "Mom, I'm sorry, but we can't make it tonight. Marissa's hosting a dinner for her coworkers. We'll reschedule." I frowned, my fingers tightening on the phone, the words jarring against the memory of Garrett's call yesterday. His voice had been warm, insistent, almost urgent, pressing me to come for a special announcement, something important, something that required my presence, my place in their lives. I reread the text, searching for clarity, my unease deepening into a quiet dread, a sense that something was terribly wrong, that the ground beneath me was shifting. Then another message arrived, cold and jagged, like a shard of glass piercing the stillness, cutting through the fragile hope I'd clung to, shattering it into pieces. "You weren't invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want you there." The words seared into me, each one a wound, a betrayal carved in the black and white, glowing on the screen like a verdict, a sentence passed without trial. My son, my Garrett, had sent them. His name, his number, Unmistakable, undeniable, a truth I couldn't escape. My hand trembled, the phone a burning weight in my palm, as if it held the power to unravel my world, to tear apart the life I'd built, the family I'd believed in. My heart clenched, icy fingers wrapping around it, squeezing until I could barely breathe, until the room seemed to tilt and sway, the walls closing in. Was this a mistake? A cruel jest? Or had the truth, long buried beneath polite smiles, forced gratitude, and hollow promises, finally clawed its way to the surface, raw and unyielding, exposing the fragility of everything I'd held dear? Memories flooded me like a tidal wave, each one vivid, piercing, a kaleidoscope of love and loss, of moments that had defined me. Little Garrett clinging to my skirt on his first day of kindergarten, his small hand warm in mine, his eyes wide with trust as he looked up at me, promising to make me proud. His teenage blush when he asked for advice about girls, his voice shy but open, seeking my guidance, my wisdom, the glow in his eyes when he introduced Marissa, his bride-to-be, his smile wide with pride as he promised a future filled with family, with connection, with love that would last. And now, this shot detached, a stranger's words from the boy I'd raised, the man I'd loved unconditionally, the son I'd given everything to, my time, my heart, my savings, my dreams, my belief in us. I sank into my armchair, the phone still clutched in my hand, as if holding it could tether me to reality, could keep the world from tilting further into chaos, could stop the pain from spreading. My gaze fell on a glossy brochure on the coffee table. River Ridge Estates, their new 3-story townhouse, a gleaming monument to their success, their status, their life, a life I'd helped build. A $120,000 down payment, signed with my name in 6 months ago. My savings poured into their dream, a dream I'd believed was ours, a dream I had thought included me. "It's an investment in the future, Mom," Garrett had said, his voice earnest, his eyes bright with possibility, his hand on mine as he spoke. "A place for family gatherings, for you, for all of us. You'll have your corner, always. A place where you belong." My corner! I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed in the quiet room, sharp and unfamiliar, a sound I barely recognized as my own. Apparently, my corner had vanished, erased by a single text. My place in their lives reduced to nothing, my presence unwelcome in the house I'd helped build, the family I'd thought was mine. I rose, my steps slow but deliberate, my body moving on instinct as my mind churned, grappling with the weight of betrayal, the sting of rejection. I walked to the old secretary desk I'd inherited from my mother, its worn wood a testament to generations of strength, of keeping secrets bum, of holding the truth when the world turned away. Inside, folders held the records of my life, meticulously organized, each one a piece of my story, my sacrifices, my love, my blindness. The thickest was labeled Garrett, its edges worn from years of additions, a chronicle of my devotion, a ledger of my generosity and my naivety. I pulled it out, my fingers brushing checks, receipts, bank statements, each one a testament to my giving, each one a promise I'd made, not just to them, but to myself. A $20,000 loan for a business Garrett abandoned after 6 months, its failure dismissed with a shrug and a vague promise to try again someday. Payments for Marissa's continuing education courses, her gleaming SUV, Toby's tennis lessons, Rebecca's college tuition, roof repairs for their old home, car insurance, a kitchen remodel Marissa deserved. Because she works so hard, Elizabeth, you don't understand. Private dental appointments for Toby's special bite, a piano tutor for Rebecca before she chose her own path, a country club membership for Marissa to network with the right people, as she'd put it, her voice dripping with ambition, her eyes gleaming with entitlement. Years of giving, of rescuing, of believing I was building a family brick by brick, check by check, sacrifice by sacrifice. Each one a promise I made to them and to myself that my generosity would bind us, that my sacrifices would earn their love, their respect, their gratitude, that my money would keep us close, keep us whole. And what had I received in return? Rare phone calls, stiff holiday visits where I felt like a guest in their lives, a formality to be endured rather than a mother to be cherished, a grandmother to be loved, smiles that never reached their eyes, thank yous laced with expectation, requests disguised as gratitude, and now, a text that carved my heart raw, exposing the truth I'd refused to see for years, the truth I'd buried under hope, under denial, under the desperate belief that my giving would be enough. I'd been their bank, their safety net, their means to an end. Not their mother, not their grandmother, not Elizabeth, a woman with her own dreams, her own heart, her own worth. A woman who'd given until there was little left for herself. The phone vibrated again, jolting me from the spiral of memories, pulling me back to the present, to the reality I could no longer avoid. Rebecca, my granddaughter, her name a warm spark in the cold, a beacon in the darkness, a reminder of the one person who saw me. "Grandma, are you coming over today? I missed you." Her words were a lifeline, sincere and untainted by expectation, a gift given freely without strings. Rebecca was different, always had been, with her calls to check on me, her visits just to talk, her care a quiet rebellion against her family's indifference, her love a light that never dimmed. I typed back, my hands steadier now, though the ache in my chest lingered like a bruise, tender and raw, a wound that pulsed with every heartbeat. "Honey, it looks like your parents have decided it's best for me to stay home." Her reply came instantly, sharp with confusion, laced with concern, her words a mirror of her loyalty, her heart. "What? Why? Daddy said yesterday you absolutely had to be there. He was so excited about it, said it was important." So, Rebecca didn't know. I pictured her in that grand house, my house, bewildered, caught in a web she hadn't woven, a pawn in a game she didn't understand, her loyalty a stark contrast to their betrayal. The truth crystallized, sharp and undeniable, cutting through years of denial like a blade through fog. All this time, I'd thought I was buying love, respect, a seat at their table, a place in their lives. But I'd only been renting their time, their smiles, their presence, my money, a currency for their fleeting attention, my sacrifices a transaction they'd come to expect, to demand. And the lease had run dry, expired with a single brutal text that laid bare the reality of my place in their lives, a place I'd built with my own hands, only to see it crumble. I picked up the phone and dialed my bank, my voice calm despite the storm raging within, a storm of anger, hurt, and a growing resolve that burned brighter with each passing second, a fire that refused to be extinguished. The polite voice on the other end verified my identity, her tone professional but cautious, as if sensing the weight of what I was about to do, the seismic shift I was setting in motion, the line I was drawing. I want to cancel all automatic payments and transfers from my accounts, every single one, and revoke the power of attorney I gave to my son, Garrett Wembley. A stunned silence stretched across the line, heavy with implication, the air thick with the gravity of my words, the finality of my choice. All payments, Mrs. Wembley. You have 174 regular payments and transfers. 174. The number landed like a gavel, a monument to my blindness, my naivety, my desperate need to be needed, to be loved. 174 promises I had made, not just to them, but to myself, that my generosity would bind us, that my sacrifices would earn their love, their respect, their gratitude, that my money would keep us close. 174 threads in a web that had trapped me, each one a payment, a check, a piece of my heart given away until there was little left for me, until I'd forgotten who I was without them. Suspend everything, I said, my voice steady, my resolve hardening into steel, unyielding and unbreakable, a force they couldn't bend. Start the process now. As the bank complied, I looked at James's photograph, his eyes steady and knowing, as if he'd seen this day coming long before I did, as if he'd known the cost of my giving, the price of my silence, the weight of my love. You were right, honey, I whispered, my voice soft but fierce, trembling with the weight of truth, with the fire of awakening, with the strength I'd forgotten I possessed. You can't let them walk over you, even if they're your own. Not even your son. The phone buzzed again. Garrett. His name, once a source of warmth, now felt like a stranger's, a name that carried no comfort, only weight, only the echo of betrayal. I ignored it, my heart no longer racing at his call, no longer tethered to his needs, his demands, his expectations. Instead, I opened a new message, my fingers trembling not with fear but with defiance, with the fire of a woman who'd finally seen the truth, who'd finally chosen herself over the illusion of family. Pay your own way, freeloaders. I typed the words, each one a rebellion, a reclamation, a declaration of independence, a refusal to be their bank any longer. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the send button, my mind flashing to the years I'd spent propping them up, to the fragile peace I'd maintained with my money, my patience, my silence. The memories surged. Garrett's first bike, bought with my overtime pay, the late nights helping him with homework, my own dreams set aside, the pride in his eyes when he graduated, my heart swelling with hope, the joy of meeting Toby and Rebecca, my grandchildren, my legacy. And then the shift. Marissa's arrival, her ambition reshaping our family, her expectations turning my love into a transaction, my sacrifices into a debt they never repaid. Was I ready to burn this bridge, to shatter the illusion I'd clung to for so long, to face the consequences of standing tall, of saying no? But they'd struck first, hadn't they? With a text that stripped away the facade, that laid bare the truth. I was no longer needed, not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as a bank, a resource to be tapped until dry, a well to be drained without thought, without care. I pressed send and powered off the phone, the act final, deliberate, like closing a book I'd read too many times, like locking a door I'd never open again, like breaking a chain I'd forged with my own hands. The silence enveloped me, not heavy, but freeing, like shedding a weight I'd carried for decades, a chain I'd built link by link, payment by payment, sacrifice by sacrifice. I slipped off my dinner dress, the fabric feeling like a costume I no longer needed, a role I no longer played, a version of myself I'd outgrown. I made a pot of tea, the steam curling like a promise of calm, of peace, of a new beginning. I opened a book I'd neglected for years, always too busy with their demands, their crises, their endless needs. The pages yellowed, but waiting, like a friend who'd never left. For the first time in decades, I'd chosen myself. And it felt like breathing again, like waking from a long, suffocating dream, my heart beating steady and strong, my soul rising from the ashes of their betrayal, my spirit alight with possibility. Morning came, crisp and clear, the air sharp with possibility, the world outside my window bright with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, as if the fog of my life had lifted, revealing a path I had forgotten, a path that led to me. I arrived at Fayetteville Community Bank before it opened, my heart steady with purpose, my steps firm, each one a declaration of my resolve, a step toward freedom, toward a life that was mine. Linda Howard, my banker of 30 years, greeted me with her familiar gray hair and sharp, attentive eyes, her smile warm but tinged with curiosity, as if she sensed the storm I'd weathered, the strength I'd found, the woman I was becoming. She handed me a thick folder, pages of statements, each line a thread in the web of their dependence, a map of my sacrifices, a ledger of my love and my blindness, a record of the promises I'd kept and the ones they'd broken. Mortgage payments for their townhouse, $3,800 a month, a house I'd never slept in, never been welcomed into, a house I'd paid for but wasn't invited to, a house that stood as a monument to their ambition, not our family. Marissa's SUV insurance, $850 quarterly, for a car she claimed was necessary for her high-profile clients, her image, her status, a status I'd funded without question. Toby's tennis club, from $200 a year, for lessons he rarely attended, his racket gathering dust in a corner, his effort as fleeting as his gratitude. Rebecca's college tuition, a gift I'd given gladly, though even she didn't know the full extent of my support, the checks I'd written in silence. Marissa's country club dues, $2,500 annually, to network with the right people, as she'd put it, her voice dripping with ambition, her eyes gleaming with entitlement. Private dental appointments for Toby's special bite, a piano tutor for Rebecca before she chose her own path, a kitchen remodel Marissa deserved because she works so hard, Elizabeth. You don't understand. I'd funded their lives, their status, their dreams, believing it was love, believing it was family, believing it would keep us close, keep us whole. And they'd repaid me with exclusion, with a text that cut deeper than any knife, that exposed the truth I'd been too blind, too hopeful to see, the truth I'd buried under years of denial. I signed the papers to cancel all 174 payments and revoke Garrett's access, my hand steady, my heart unburdened, each stroke of the pen a step toward freedom, a declaration of independence, a vow to myself. Linda's voice was soft, cautious, her eyes searching mine as she spoke, her tone laced with concern. Are you sure, Elizabeth? This is a radical change, a complete shift in your life, in everything you've built. I've never been surer, I said, my voice calm but resolute, my pen moving with purpose, each signature a promise to myself, a commitment to reclaim my life, my heart, my future. I've been carrying them for too long, Linda. It's time I carried myself. Time I lived for me. She nodded, her expression softening with something like admiration, a quiet respect for the woman I was becoming. The woman I'd always been, but had forgotten. I'll prepare the documents. You're a strong woman, Elizabeth. I've always known it, but I see it now, clearer than ever, like a light breaking through. I smiled faintly, the words settling like a long-forgotten truth, a spark reigniting in my chest, warm and steady. Strong. Yes, I was. I'd just forgotten how to be, buried under their needs, their demands, their expectations, buried under the weight of 174 promises I'd kept and the ones they'd broken. Next, I visited Francis Whitaker, my lawyer, a man who'd known James and me for decades, his graying beard and sly eyes unchanged by time, his office a familiar haven of logic, clarity, and truth. I told him I wanted to rewrite my will and establish an irrevocable trust to protect what was left of my wealth, my security, my future, to ensure I'd never again be a resource to be drained. 40% to Rebecca for her loyalty, her love, her heart, a gift for the granddaughter who saw me, who valued me. 10% to a local library charity I'd always admired, a nod to the books that had sustained me through the years, the stories that had kept me whole, the rest at my discretion to ensure my own security, my own dreams, my own life. Garrett and Toby would receive the legal minimum, enough to satisfy the law. Nothing more, nothing to feed their dependents, nothing to pull me back into their web. Marissa? Nothing at all, not a cent, not a gesture, not a trace of my generosity, not a whisper of my heart. Francis raised an eyebrow, his pen pausing over his notepad, his eyes studying me with a mix of curiosity and respect, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Family trouble, Elizabeth? This is a bold move, a line in the sand. They've changed, I said, my voice steady, my eyes meeting his without flinching, my heart firm in its truth, unyielding in its resolve. And so have I. I'm done being their bank, their crutch, their safety net. I want to protect what's mine, what's left of me, what I still have to give, to myself, to the life I deserve. He nodded. No further questions, his pen moving swiftly as we spent the next 2 hours crafting a plan to safeguard my assets, to ensure my future was mine alone to shape, mine to live, mine to dream. As I signed the final papers, I felt a weight lift, a chain break, the last link of their hold on me dissolving into dust, scattering in the wind like ashes of a life I'd left behind. I was free, not just from them, but from the version of myself I'd let them create, the version that gave until there was nothing left, that loved until it hurt, that lived for others and forgot herself. That evening, Rebecca arrived, her brown hair and stubborn brow a mirror of my younger self, her eyes clouded with worry, her fingers tapping nervously on the kitchen table as she sat across from me, her presence a comfort, a reminder of what was real. "Grandma, what's happening?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent, her concern genuine, her heart open. "Dad's in a panic. He says you've blocked all payments, and he won't explain why. He's acting like the world's ending, like everything's falling apart. What's going on?" I showed her Garrett's text, watching her face pale, her eyes widen with shock, tears brimming as she read the words, her hand covering her mouth, her breath catching. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice breaking, thick with emotion, heavy with disbelief. "That's awful, Grandma. How could he do that to you? How could they treat you like this?" I poured her tea, the steam curling between us like a bridge, a connection that held fast despite the storm. My voice was steady, though the ache in my chest lingered, a bruise that pulsed with every heartbeat, tender and raw. It was the last straw, honey. For years, I've paid for everything: your house, Toby's lessons, your mother's lifestyle, their cars, their dreams, their lives. I thought it was love, that it would keep us close, that it would make us a family. And all I got was disrespect, neglect, and this. I gestured to the phone, the message still glowing like a scar, a wound that refused to fade, a truth that refused to be ignored. Rebecca nodded, her voice soft but sure, her eyes meeting mine with a clarity that warmed me, a loyalty that grounded me, a love that needed no price. I've seen it, Grandma, especially with Mom. I tried to tell Dad, but he always defended her, said she was stressed, that you didn't understand her ambition, her need to keep up appearances, to be perfect. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't know how to fix it, how to make them show you, really see you. They'll manage, I said, my tone resolute, my heart firm despite the flicker of guilt that tried to creep in, the whisper of doubt that wondered if I'd gone too far, if I'd broken something irreparable. They're adults, Rebecca. It's time they stood on their own, without me as their crutch, without my money as their foundation. It's time they learned what I've learned, that love isn't a transaction, that family isn't a debt. She looked at me, a spark of admiration in her eyes, a quiet pride that felt like a gift, a validation of my choice, my strength. I've never seen you so strong, Grandma. You're like a different person, like you've come alive, like you're finally free. I smiled faintly, the weight of her words settling warmly, like sunlight after a long, cold winter, like a fire rekindled in my soul. I'd forgotten I could be, honey, but I'm remembering now, and I'm not going back to who I was. The next morning, Marissa stood on my doorstep, impeccable in her tailored coat, her hair flawless, her smile practiced. A box of expensive pastries from a downtown bakery in her hands, a prop in her carefully staged performance. Her voice was honeyed, dripping with false warmth, each word calculated to disarm, to manipulate, to pull me back into the role I'd played for years. Elizabeth, good morning. May I come in? We need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding, and I'm here to make it right, to fix this, to bring us back together. I met her gaze, unflinching, my own voice steady, cutting through her charade like a blade through silk, sharp and unyielding. You're here for the money, Marissa. Let's not play games. We both know why you're standing here, pastries and all, with your smile and your apologies. Her smile wavered, a crack in her polished facade, her eyes narrowing slightly, a flash of frustration betraying her composure. But she pressed on, her tone shifting to regret, her eyes wide with feigned sincerity, a performance honed by years of practice, years of getting her way. Elizabeth, that text was a mistake, a moment of stress. Garrett shouldn't have sent it, and I'm so sorry it hurt you. We were planning a dinner for my clients, a last-minute thing, and it got out of hand, got miscommunicated. You're vital to our family. You know that. We need you. We love you, Elizabeth. I wasn't swayed, my heart hardened against her manipulation, my eyes seeing her clearly for the first time, seeing the ambition, the entitlement, the calculation behind her smile, behind her words. You didn't want me at your table, Marissa, in the house I paid for, the house I made possible with my savings, my trust. You didn't want me there, period. Name one thing you've done for me, unselfishly, without expecting something in return. One moment of care, of respect, of love that wasn't tied to a request, a need, a demand. One time you saw me as Elizabeth, not as a checkbook, not as a means to an end. She froze, her lips a thin line, her eyes flashing with calculation, searching for an answer and finding none, her silence a confession of her indifference, her priorities laid bare in the quiet that followed. "You'll regret this, Elizabeth," she hissed, her mask slipping, her voice sharp with anger, with desperation, as she stormed out, the pastries left on my porch like an offering I'd rejected, a bribe I'd refused. "You'll end up alone, with no one to care for you when you're too old to manage, when you're frail and forgotten, when you need us and we're gone." I stood in the doorway watching her go, her words echoing but powerless, like arrows missing their mark, like wind scattering dust across a barren field. Alone? No, I had myself, and that was a foundation stronger than any I'd built for them, stronger than the house I'd paid for, the cars I'd funded, the lives I'd propped up with my savings, my heart, my silence. I closed the door, the sound final, a line drawn in the sand, a boundary set in stone, a declaration that I was done being used, done being invisible, done being anything but Elizabeth. 2 weeks later, the storm broke, and it came in a form I hadn't anticipated. A spectacle so brazen it took my breath away. A maneuver so calculated it could only have come from Marissa's mind, her ambition turned to desperation. She orchestrated what she called a family meeting, arriving with an entourage, her parents, her sister, her brother-in-law, even family friends I barely recognized. A crowd of awkward faces gathered on my lawn like a tribunal, a jury summoned to pass judgment, to shame me into submission. Marissa stood at the helm, her expression one of calculated determination, her eyes gleaming with the certainty of victory, her posture that of a general commanding her troops, confident in her strategy. It was a staged ambush, a public shaming meant to break my resolve, to force me back into the role I had played for years, the compliant provider, the silent bank, the mother who gave without question, without complaint, without pause. I stood firm, my voice cutting through the morning air, steady and unyielding, a force they hadn't expected, a strength they couldn't bend. "I didn't invite these people into my home, Marissa. You, Garrett, and the kids can come in. The rest must leave. This is my house, my rules, my life, and I'm done letting you dictate the terms." Her smile strained, a crack in her armor, her eyes narrowing with frustration, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. But she relented, sending her support group to wait in their cars, their faces a mix of confusion and discomfort, their presence a prop in her performance, a chorus meant to amplify her narrative. Inside, she spun a tale of their suffering, her voice rising with theatrical urgency, each word a carefully crafted plea, a performance designed to guilt me, to manipulate me. Her parents' nursing home fees, unpaid and looming, threatening their security. Toby's rent, teetering on eviction, his future uncertain, their mortgage on the brink of foreclosure, their grand life crumbling, all because of my selfish decision, my cruel withdrawal of support, my refusal to play my role. Garrett pleaded, his voice strained with panic, his eyes darting between me and his wife, torn between loyalty to her and the desperation of their situation. "Mom, please," he said, his voice breaking, his hands trembling. "We're struggling. We didn't mean to hurt you. We need you. Please, just help us one more time." Toby sulked, avoiding my gaze, his arms crossed like a petulant child, his silence a shield against accountability, his presence a reminder of the entitlement I'd enabled. But Rebecca stood silent, her eyes locked on me, a quiet pillar of support, her presence a reminder that not all was lost, that some bonds held true, that love could exist without a price. "This isn't about the text," I said, my voice steady, cutting through their noise like a blade through silk, sharp and unyielding, a truth they couldn't dodge. "It's about years of neglect, of disrespect, of being used. I was your AT, not your mother, not your grandmother, not your mother-in-law. I was a resource to be tapped, a bank to be drained, a well to be drawn from until dry. I'm done, Marissa. I'm done being used, done being invisible, done being anything but Elizabeth." Marissa's anger erupted, her voice sharp, her face contorted with fury, her composure unraveling, her mask falling away. "You're selfish, Elizabeth. You're destroying our family, tearing us apart with your petty grudge, your need for control. You're punishing us for one mistake, one moment, and you'll regret it when you're alone, when you need us, and we're gone." I met her gaze, unflinching, my heart calm despite her storm, my voice low but resolute, carrying the weight of years unspoken, the strength of a woman reborn. "Family isn't a transaction, Marissa. It's care, respect, love, none of which I've gotten from you in years. Name one moment you showed me kindness without a price tag. One gesture of care that wasn't tied to a request, a need, a demand. One time you saw me as Elizabeth, not as a checkbook, not as a means to an end, not as a resource to be used." She faltered, her lips pressed tight, unable to answer, her silence a confession of her indifference, her priorities laid bare in the quiet that followed, heavy and damning. Garrett shifted, his eyes downcast, his hands clenched in his lap, his silence heavy with guilt, with the weight of his choices. Toby fidgeted, his inability to meet my eyes a mirror of his shame, his complicity in their demands, his failure to see me until now. Only Rebecca spoke, her voice soft but firm, cutting through the tension like a beacon in the dark, a light in the storm. "I'm here because I respect you, Grandma. I don't want your money. I want you, your stories, your strength, your love, the woman you are." Her words were a gift, a spark of light in the darkness, a reminder of what family could be, should be, a bond built on love, not obligation, on respect, yet not expectation. I held them close as I faced the others, my resolve unshaken, my heart steady. "I'm asking you to leave," I said, my voice calm but firm, my words final. "This conversation is over. My door is open to you, Rebecca, Toby, for real connection, not for money. But the Bank of Elizabeth is closed, and it's not reopening, not now, not ever." Rebecca hugged me, her embrace tight, her voice a whisper against my shoulder, warm and fierce. "I'll call tomorrow, Grandma. I'm proud of you, so proud, and I love you." The others left in silence, Marissa's threats lingering like smoke in the air, her voice sharp as she stormed out, her words a final, desperate jab, a last attempt to wound. "You'll regret this, Elizabeth. You'll be alone, and you'll remember this day when you're old and helpless, when you have no one left, when you're begging for us to care." I closed the door, the sound final, a barrier between the past and the future I was choosing, a line drawn in the sand, a boundary set in stone, a declaration that I was done being used, done being invisible, done being anything but Elizabeth. Alone? No. I had myself, and that was enough. A foundation stronger than any I'd built for them, stronger than the house I'd paid for, the cars I'd funded, the lives I'd propped up with my savings, my heart, my silence. I had myself, and I was enough. That evening, my friend Laureen arrived, a bottle of wine in hand, her blunt honesty a balm to my soul, her laughter a reminder of the life waiting beyond the drama, the life I was reclaiming, the life I was building. "You did it, Elizabeth," she said, raising her glass, her eyes gleaming with pride, her voice warm with conviction, with love. "You finally stood up to them. You're free, my friend, free to be you, to live for yourself, to shine. And damn, it looks good on you, like a light you've been hiding too long." We talked late into the night, not as a mother or grandmother, but as a woman reclaiming her life, her voice, her power, her dreams, her heart. I wasn't alone. I had friends, purpose, a spark I'd thought extinguished years ago, smothered by their demands, their crises, their endless needs. The weight of 174 promises, 174 receipts, was lifting, and I could breathe again, my heart lighter, my spirit rising, my soul awakening to the possibilities of a life lived for me, a life I had almost forgotten I deserved. 6 months later, I sat on a terrace in Tuscany, Italy, the sun warming my face, the air rich with the scent of vineyards, the world alive with color, with possibility, with the promise of new beginnings, new dreams. Laureen sat beside me, scribbling in her travel journal, her laughter mingling with the soft clink of wine glasses, the hum of a distant village, the rustle of olive trees in the gentle breeze. I'd booked this trip, a dream once shared with James, now mine to claim, to live, to savor, a dream I'd buried under their needs, their crises, their endless wants, but no more. This was my time, my story, my life, and I was living it fully, unapologetically, gloriously, every moment a testament to my strength, my resilience, my right to be here. In those 6 months, Garrett and Marissa tried to sway me, their tactics shifting like the tides, each one a test of my resolve, a challenge to my strength. Threats of lawsuits that fizzled when I consulted Francis, their bluster no match for my clarity, my determination, my refusal to bend. Apologies laced with requests, each one a thinly veiled plea for money, a return to the status quo, a step back into the role I'd rejected, a surprise visit from Garrett, a bouquet of flowers in hand, his eyes soft with remorse, his voice trembling as he spoke of regret, of mistakes, of wanting to make things right, until he asked for just a little help to tide them over, to save their house, their life, their image. I held firm, my heart steady, my voice calm but unyielding, my resolve a fortress they couldn't breach, a wall they couldn't climb. "No, Garrett," I said, my eyes meeting his, my voice soft but firm, carrying the weight of my truth. "You're adults. It's time you managed without me. It's time you learned what I've learned, that life isn't owed, it's earned, and love isn't a transaction, it's a choice." They sold their townhouse, moved to a smaller apartment, the grand life they'd built on my savings, shrinking to fit their reality, their choices, their consequences, their truth. Marissa took an extra job, her polished facade fraying at the edges, her designer clothes replaced by simpler ones, her ambition tempered by the weight of responsibility, by the reality of a life without my support. Garrett, for the first time, began to budget, to take responsibility, his calls growing less frequent, his tone less demanding, his words carrying hints of humility, of growth. Though time would tell if they'd last, if he'd learned the lesson I'd been forced to teach. Toby, to my surprise, accepted a job with Francis Whitaker, my lawyer, sorting documents and answering phones. A humble start, but a start nonetheless. A step toward standing on his own, away from the shadow of his mother's ambition, his father's compliance, his own entitlement. Our meetings grew less strained, hints of sincerity creeping into his words, his eyes meeting mine with something like respect, though cautious, tentative, as if he were learning to see me anew, to see me as Elizabeth, not as a resource, not as a grandmother who gave, but as a woman who stood tall. Time would tell if he'd learned, if he'd grow into the man I hoped he could be, the man I'd once seen in his childhood smiles. Rebecca remained my anchor, my touchstone, my light in the darkness, calling weakly, visiting without agenda. Her presence a reminder of what family could be, should be, a bond built on love, not obligation, on respect, not expectation, on care, not calculation. She pushed me to take this trip, to live for myself, to chase the dreams I'd buried under their needs, their crises, their endless wants. "You deserve this, Grandma," she'd said, her eyes bright with pride, her voice steady with conviction, with love. "You deserve to be happy, to be free, to be you, the woman you've always been, the woman I've always loved." As I sipped my wine, my phone buzzed. A photo from Rebecca, her new apartment. Simple, but hers. A space she'd carved out on her own. A testament to her independence, her strength, her heart. "Can't wait for you to see it, Grandma. Hope Italy's beautiful." I smiled, my heart full, my soul at peace, and sent her a snapshot of the Tuscan hills, golden under the setting sun, the world alive with possibility, with hope, with the promise of tomorrow, of a life reclaimed. Marissa's words, "You'll be alone," were dust in the wind, scattered by the truth of my life now, by the reality I'd built, by the strength I'd found. I wasn't alone. I had Rebecca, Laureen, rekindled friendships with women who saw me, valued me, not for what I could give, but for who I was, for the woman I'd become, for the woman I'd always been, but had forgotten. And most importantly, I had myself, a self I had rediscovered, strong and whole, a woman who'd finally learned to stand tall, to live fully, to love herself as fiercely as she'd loved others, to embrace her own worth, her own dreams, her own life. At 77, I'd learned the hardest truth, the one that broke me and remade me, the one that tore me apart and stitched me back together, stronger, brighter, whole. Love cannot be bought, not with 174 receipts, not with a lifetime of sacrifices, not with a heart poured out like water into hands that never held it back, that never saw its worth. I'd given my power to others, my son, his wife, their endless demands, until I reclaimed it, piece by piece, choice by choice, moment by moment, until I stood tall, unbowed, unbroken, a woman reborn. Tuscany's starry sky stretched above me, each star a promise of freedom, a testament to my strength, my resilience, my right to be the main character in my own story, the author of my own life, the heart of my own tale. I was no longer a footnote in their lives. A bank to be drawn from, a role to be played, a resource to be used until depleted. I was Elizabeth, the heart, the soul, the fire of my own story. A woman who'd learned to say no, to set boundaries, to choose herself, to live unapologetically. This was my time to explore the cobblestone streets of Florence, to savor the scent of vineyards, to feel the sun on my face and the wind in my hair, to laugh with Laureen under a sky full of stars, to live fully, gloriously, without regret, without fear, without the weight of their expectations. And so, dear listeners, as I raise my glass to the Italian night, to the stars that light my path, to the life I have claimed, I invite you to do the same. Find your strength. Rewrite your story, break the chains that bind you, and never let anyone dim the light that burns within you. You are enough, just as you are, and your story is yours to write, yours to live, yours to love, yours to cherish. Until next time, this is Elizabeth, signing off from Elizabeth's Stories with a heart full of hope, a sky full of stars, and a life that's finally, gloriously, unapologetically mine.